He slept without clothes, and a wild frontier girl claimed him forever. Ethan had been walking for hours, the sun blazing overhead and his water bottle long empty. He had left the human settlements far behind, venturing into the wild frontier of a planet few humans had ever seen. Strange plants with glowing leaves lined the narrow trail, and the distant mountains seemed to move like waves in the heat haze. It was beautiful, but unforgiving. Every step reminded him that he was utterly alone. By late afternoon, exhaustion had begun to weigh heavily on him. His legs ached, his stomach growled, and the scorching sun made his shirt stick uncomfortably to his back. All he could think about was finding a safe place to rest. That's when he spotted it. A natural hot spring hidden among jagged rocks, steam rising in lazy clouds. The sight was like a promise of relief, a rare gift from a land that seemed determined to challenge him at every turn. Without thinking twice, Ethan dropped his backpack and approached the pool. The water shimmered under the sun, warm and inviting. For a moment, he forgot everything, his thirst, his hunger, the strange alien world surrounding him. He stripped off his clothes, setting them neatly on a nearby rock, and stepped into the water. The warmth spread through his tired muscles, loosening the knots of fatigue. Within minutes, he had fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep. He did not hear the rustle of movement nearby, did not see the shadow that slipped silently among the rocks. Aurora, the wild frontier girl, had been watching him for several minutes, crouched behind a small outcropping. She had lived all her life in this untamed land, a place where survival depended on sharp instincts and quick thinking. She had never seen another human like him before, and yet she did not feel fear. Instead, a flicker of curiosity lit her eyes. Exposed in the middle of the wild frontier, Aurora had faced storms, predators, and alien creatures, yet she had never encountered someone so boldly foolish. With a soft chuckle, she shook her head and stepped closer. Her bare feet made no sound on the soft, mossy ground. The steam from the hot springs swirled around her like a veil, partially hiding her from his sight. She studied him quietly, his relaxed posture, the way the sunlight caught his hair, the faint lines of fatigue on his face. There was something almost humanly fragile about him, and yet something undeniably intriguing. Finally, she decided he needed help. Not that she expected him to thank her. Humans like him, from what she had heard of distant settlements, often saw themselves as superior, clever, or strong. But in the wild, arrogance was dangerous. And Aurora had never lost her life to arrogance. Not today, not here. She leaned down, grabbed a cloth from her small pack, and gently draped it over him. The movement startled Ethan from his sleep. His eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding his gaze. "Whoa, whoo," he mumbled, squinting through the steam. "You," Aurora said simply, her voice calm but firm. "You're lucky I found you. You could have frozen, or worse, been attacked by a creature while sleeping like that." Ethan blinked, taking in the sight of the girl who had rescued him. She was wild-looking, her hair tangled from days of living outside, yet her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and unafraid. Her clothes were simple, made from animal skins and fabrics he didn't recognize, but they suited her perfectly. She stood tall, confident, and untamed, a living spirit of the frontier. Thank you," Ethan stammered, suddenly very aware of his nakedness and the strange heat of embarrassment crawling up his neck. Aurora raised an eyebrow, a small smirk playing on her lips. "You're welcome, but don't thank me yet. First, you need to learn some rules of this land. Sleeping naked in the open is not one of them. He swallowed nervously, nodding. Right. Rules. I'm Ethan. Ah, I guess you could say I'm exploring. Exploring, she repeated, sounding amused. Well, explorers usually survive by paying attention to their surroundings. You apparently sleep through them. Ethan felt a sheepish grin spread across his face. What? Ah. Didn't expect to find anyone here. You shouldn't, Aurora said. This part of the frontier is special. Dangerous if you don't know it, beautiful if you do. And you don't. Ethan nodded, realizing she was right. He had entered this world with little more than curiosity and hope, unprepared for the challenges it could throw at him. Yet, there was something captivating about this wild land, and about Aurora herself. She was like the land, fierce, untamed, and alive. Aurora helped him out of the water, wrapping the cloth around his shoulders. She offered him dried fruits and water from her small canteen. He accepted gratefully, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the hot spring. "You're lucky I found you," she said again. "Most humans I hear about don't last long here. I'll try to learn," Ethan said, his voice steadying. "I want to survive. I want to see more of this place." Aurora studied him for a moment. There was something honest in his eyes, something that told her he wasn't just another foolish visitor. Maybe he could adapt, or maybe he would fail spectacularly. Either way, she decided he needed guidance. "Follow me," she said finally, turning away from the pool. "You'll need clothes, food, and a proper place to sleep tonight. And then we'll see if you can actually handle this land." Ethan stumbled after her, his backpack in hand, feeling both nervous and excited. As they walked through the dense forest, he noticed details he had never seen before. The way the alien leaves shimmered in the fading sunlight, the subtle sounds of creatures moving quietly among the trees, the strange patterns of light that danced across the ground. Aurora pointed out edible plants, safe paths, and small hazards hidden in plain sight. "You'll need to remember all of this," she said. "One mistake could cost you dearly. The frontier doesn't forgive easily." I think I can," Ethan replied, trying to sound confident. Deep down, he knew he had a lot to learn, but something about Aurora made him believe he could. She walked with such certainty, such understanding of the land, that following her felt less like survival and more like being guided by someone who truly belonged here. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, they reached a small clearing surrounded by towering rocks. Aurora had prepared a simple shelter made from woven branches and leaves. A fire crackled in the center, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. The warmth of the flames, the smell of the forest, and the quiet companionship created a sense of safety Ethan hadn't felt in days. "You'll sleep here tonight," Aurora said. "And tomorrow we begin your lessons in earnest. You'll learn how to survive, how to move, how to respect the land. Maybe you'll even learn how to live here, without embarrassing yourself in front of me." Ethan chuckled softly. "I'll try not to embarrass myself again. I promise." Aurora smirked. "We'll see." Humans are tricky creatures, sometimes stubborn, sometimes clever, sometimes surprisingly capable. I'll admit, you have a spark. Don't waste it. As Ethan settled near the fire, he realized how different this world was from anything he had known. The frontier was dangerous, yes, but it was alive, vibrant, and full of possibilities. And Aurora? Well, she was a guide, a protector, and perhaps something more. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of hope. He had no idea what the future held, no idea how this strange, wild girl would shape his life. But he knew one thing for certain. He wanted to see it all. Outside, the stars began to shine, alien constellations glittering against the dark sky. Ethan felt small and vulnerable, yet strangely alive. And as Aurora sat across the fire, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he had found a place where he truly belonged. The frontier was wild, untamed, and full of surprises, and so was she. And for the first time, Ethan wasn't afraid. Morning came slowly over the wild frontier. The first rays of light crept over jagged cliffs and illuminated the alien forest around them. Ethan woke to the sound of birds, strange, bright-colored creatures that chirped and flitted among the glowing trees. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and fragrant flowers. He rubbed his eyes and remembered last night's events. The hot spring, the strange wild girl, and the small fire that had kept him warm. Aurora was already awake. She sat cross-legged near the fire, cleaning her small collection of tools and supplies. Her sharp eyes caught Ethan staring. "Finally awake," she said, her voice calm but teasing. "I was beginning to think you'd sleep through the entire morning." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Sorry, I guess I needed the rest." Aurora smirked. Needed the rest, or wanted to avoid the work ahead? "I'll work," Ethan said quickly. "I'm ready." Aurora stood and extended a hand. "Good. Let's start your first lesson in survival. Today you'll learn how to move through the forest without frightening the creatures, and how to find water that's safe to drink. These are basic skills, but most humans I've met can't manage them properly." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had always considered himself somewhat resourceful, but nothing he had done in the human settlements could compare to surviving in this wild, alien world. "First," Aurora said, "observe everything. Listen, smell, watch. Your senses are your strongest tools here." She gestured to a path leading into the forest. "Follow me, but pay attention. Every step counts." As they moved through the forest, Ethan noticed things he had never seen before. Leaves that shimmered like metal in the sun, vines that curled and uncurling in response to touch, and small creatures that darted across the ground in dazzling patterns. Aurora moved with confidence, barely making a sound, guiding Ethan through the thick underbrush. "See that plant over there?" she asked, pointing to a small bush with bright purple berries. "Those are safe to eat, but the ones with red tips? Not safe. They'll give you stomach cramps, or worse." Ethan knelt down, examining the berries. "How do you know which ones are safe?" "Experience," Aurora said simply, "and observation. The forest tells you its secrets if you listen." Ethan realized this was more than just survival. It was a lesson in respect. Aurora didn't just live in the forest. She belonged to it. She understood its rhythms, its dangers, and its gifts, and he wanted to learn that too. They walked further, and Aurora stopped by a small stream. "Water is everywhere, but most of it isn't safe. You have to know what to look for." She showed him how to check for signs of cleanliness: clear flow, absence of strange smells, plants growing nearby. Then she taught him how to use simple stones to filter debris. Ethan watched carefully, then tried it himself. It worked. The first sip of fresh, cool water was refreshing beyond words. Aurora nodded approvingly. See? Humans can adapt if they try. As the day went on, Aurora taught him other essential skills: how to move silently through tall grass so as not to startle the forest creatures, how to identify edible roots and leaves, how to build a temporary shelter using only natural materials. She challenged Ethan constantly, pushing him to think, observe, and act. "You're doing better than I expected," she admitted around mid-afternoon. "Most humans fail at the first lesson. But you, you're paying attention. That matters more than strength." Ethan smiled, feeling proud. "I want to learn. I really do." Aurora gave him a rare smile in return. "Good. That's the only way to survive here." As they moved through the forest, they came across a clearing filled with a herd of strange deer-like creatures. Their skin shimmered with a soft blue light, and their antlers twisted like crystal. Ethan froze, unsure whether to move closer or retreat. Aurora knelt beside him. "Observe, don't approach. Watch their behavior. They'll show you how to move without danger." Ethan watched in awe as Aurora demonstrated. She moved slowly, bending slightly, arms out to balance herself. The creatures noticed her presence but remained calm. Ethan mirrored her movements, careful to imitate her steps. To his surprise, the creatures did not flee. "You see?" Aurora whispered. "It's all about respect. If you respect them, they respect you." Ethan felt a thrill of accomplishment. For the first time, he realized that he was not just surviving. He was learning to live in the wild, to connect with it, and even to belong. By evening, Aurora decided it was time for a more practical challenge. She handed Ethan a small bundle of dried herbs and asked him to prepare a simple meal over the fire. Ethan fumbled at first, unsure how to combine the ingredients, but Aurora guided him patiently. Soon he had created a fragrant, tasty stew that filled the clearing with inviting aromas. "Not bad," Aurora said, tasting it carefully. "You might just survive here yet." Ethan grinned, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't felt in a long time. "Thanks. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." "You're learning," she said simply. "And that's what counts. Humans often underestimate themselves, but you've shown curiosity, patience, and adaptability. Those traits matter more than raw strength." As night fell, they sat near the fire, eating the meal they had prepared together. The stars above sparkled in unfamiliar constellations, painting the sky with alien beauty. Ethan felt a quiet awe. He was a small part of something vast and alive, something that had no need for human inventions or machines. Aurora leaned back on her hands, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "You have a strange way of thinking," she said. "But it works. You notice details that others miss, and you learn quickly. That's rare for humans." "I guess I just want to understand," Ethan replied. "This place, it's amazing. And you seem to know it all." Aurora laughed softly. "I've spent my whole life here. The forest is part of me, and now you want to be part of it too. That's a good start." As they settled down for the night, Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest, not from the fire, but from the bond forming between them. Aurora had claimed no ownership over him, no orders or rules beyond survival and respect. Yet he felt a connection he couldn't explain. She was his guide, his teacher, and somehow, his companion. He drifted off to sleep that night under the alien stars, feeling more alive than he had ever felt in the human settlements he had left behind. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring more lessons, more challenges, and perhaps more discoveries about Aurora herself. and about the wild frontier that now seemed to hold endless possibilities. For the first time, Ethan didn't just see the frontier as a place to explore. He saw it as a home, a place where humans could thrive if they paid attention, adapted, and respected the land. And beside him, Aurora slept lightly, ever watchful, yet allowing him the freedom to grow, to stumble, and to learn. The wild frontier was testing him, shaping him, and he was ready to meet it with courage, curiosity, and a heart wide open. Tomorrow, he would take another step toward survival, toward understanding, and toward a connection with this wild girl who had claimed a piece of his curiosity and perhaps of his heart. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the alien forest in shades of gold and green. Ethan stretched and blinked at the bright light, remembering the lessons of the previous day. He felt stronger, more alert, and more connected to the wild land around him. Yet, as he glanced at Aurora, he realized that surviving was not the only lesson he was learning. There was something else, something deeper, forming quietly between them. Aurora was already awake, sitting on a flat rock near the edge of a small cliff that overlooked a valley filled with shimmering plants. She watched the morning mist curl around the trees, her eyes thoughtful. Ethan approached cautiously. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," she replied without turning to look at him. "Ready for today's lesson?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." "What will it be?" Aurora finally glanced at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "Today you learn about movement and observation, but in a new way. You're going to track a creature through the forest and follow it without being noticed. You must observe its habits, where it feeds, how it moves. Only then can you understand it. Only then can you survive here fully." Ethan's stomach tightened. Tracking a wild creature sounded both exciting and frightening. But he nodded, determined. "I'll do my best." Aurora handed him a simple cloth pack filled with dried food, water, and a small notebook. "Use this to take notes. Humans often rely on memory, but the forest is too complex for that. Write down what you see." They moved silently through the underbrush, Aurora leading the way. Aurora leading the way. Every step was careful and deliberate. Ethan tried to mimic her movements, crouching low, stepping lightly. The forest seemed alive around them, every rustle and chirp a message to those who could listen. Finally, Aurora pointed to a set of glowing tracks on the ground. "Here, this creature passed through recently. Follow me, but keep your eyes and ears open." Ethan knelt to examine the tracks. They were unlike anything he had seen. Small, rounded pads with faint, luminescent patterns that pulsed slightly under his gaze. "What kind of creature makes these?" he whispered. Aurora shrugged. "Not important. Observe, follow, learn. That's the rule." They crept through the forest, the tracks leading them past twisting vines, shimmering leaves, and pools of clear water. After an hour of careful tracking, they spotted it, a small, fox-like creature with sleek silver fur and ears that twitched like antennas. Its eyes were bright amber, reflecting the sunlight. The creature moved gracefully, unaware of the humans following it. Ethan held his breath, feeling a thrill of wonder. Aurora crouched beside him, whispering instructions. "Watch its movements. Note where it stops, what it eats, how it interacts with the environment. This is how you learn the rhythm of the wild." He pulled out his notebook and began sketching, writing observations in simple sentences. Moves quickly, pauses at blue flowers, sniffs the air, avoids tall grass. Aurora watched him silently, impressed. Hours passed. Ethan grew tired but remained focused. He realized that tracking the creature required patience, attention, and respect. Any sudden movement could scare it away, undoing all their work. Aurora occasionally corrected his posture, showed him subtle ways to blend with shadows, and reminded him to breathe calmly. "You're improving," she said quietly during a brief rest. "Most humans give up long before this. But you keep trying. That matters." Ethan smiled. "I want to do this right. I want to understand." Aurora's gaze softened for a moment. "Good. That's why I brought you here. Not just to survive, but to connect with this place. Humans are clever. You can adapt. You can belong. If you pay attention." The rest of the day passed in a blur of observation and silent cooperation. They tracked the creature to a small grove filled with luminescent flowers. It stopped to drink from a clear spring, its movements elegant and careful. Ethan scribbled notes while Aurora observed the environment, pointing out hidden dangers and subtle signs of life. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the grove, Aurora finally said, "Enough for today. You've learned much. And more importantly, you've learned patience. That is more valuable than strength in this world." Ethan exhaled, feeling both relieved and exhilarated. "I never imagined I could follow a wild creature without scaring it away." "Thank you," Aurora shrugged. "You did it yourself. I only guided you." Humans have more potential than most creatures give them credit for. As they made their way back to their shelter, Ethan noticed something new in the forest. The creatures they had observed earlier were beginning to approach without fear. Birds landed near their path, and small animals darted around them. It was as if the forest itself had accepted his presence. "I think they trust me," Ethan said, amazed. Aurora smiled, a rare warmth in her eyes. "Not just trust, they recognize that you belong here, at least enough to survive and observe. That is the first step toward true connection." That night, they sat near the fire again, eating a simple meal of berries and roots. Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. He was no longer just a visitor. He was learning to live in this wild world, guided by someone who understood it completely. Aurora watched him silently for a while, then spoke. "You know, humans are strange creatures. You come from cities filled with noise and machines, yet you manage to adapt quickly when needed. Most wouldn't last a day here." Ethan looked at her, curiosity in his eyes. "Why do you stay here all alone?" Aurora paused, staring into the fire. "I grew up here. I know the land, its dangers, its secrets. I've learned to survive because I have no choice. But I like it. It's freedom. And I like being the one in control of my world." Ethan nodded, understanding. "It must be lonely sometimes." She shrugged lightly. "Sometimes, but it's better than being trapped by rules I don't agree with. Besides, meeting you is interesting. You're different, not like other humans." Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. There was a connection forming, quiet but undeniable. He realized that Aurora didn't need him, yet somehow she had allowed him into her world. That was more powerful than any gift he could imagine. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. Aurora looked at him, her eyes serious for the first time. "I watch you closely. You learn. You respect the forest. You don't lie. That's enough for now. Trust comes with time." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of humility and pride. He understood that this was not a simple friendship. It was a bond forged in the wild, through shared effort, patience, and respect. The next morning, Aurora decided to introduce another lesson, one that would require teamwork. She led Ethan to a small hill overlooking a valley filled with tall, alien grasses that swayed like waves. Today, you'll build a shelter together, not just for survival, but to see how well you can cooperate. Alone, humans are weak here. Together, they can thrive. Ethan and Aurora gathered materials, branches, leaves, and vines, and worked side by side. Aurora demonstrated techniques for weaving branches into a sturdy structure, then let Ethan try. He fumbled at first, but with her guidance, he learned quickly. They laughed when the structure collapsed under his weight and cheered when it finally stood strong against the wind. "Not bad," Aurora said, examining their work. "It will keep you dry, safe, and comfortable. And it will last for weeks if maintained." Ethan grinned. "We make a good team." Aurora nodded, a small but genuine smile appearing. Yes, humans and frontier girls can make a strong team if they pay attention and respect each other. As the sun set, they sat inside the shelter, looking out over the valley. The creatures of the forest moved quietly in the distance, and the air was filled with the hum of life. Ethan felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the land, but to Aurora, to the lesson she had taught, and to the wild frontier itself. For the first time, he realized that survival was not just about food, water, or shelter. It was about understanding, observation, and trust. And he had found both in this wild girl who had claimed a piece of his curiosity and perhaps of his heart. As night fell and the stars glittered above, Ethan felt a calm certainty. The frontier was vast, challenging, and beautiful, and he was no longer an outsider. He had a guide, a companion, and a purpose. And beside him, Aurora rested, quietly acknowledging the bond they had formed, one built on respect, trust, and shared adventure. Tomorrow, they would face new challenges, but for now they were partners in the wild, learning together, growing together, and discovering that even in the untamed frontier, humans could thrive and even find connection. The morning sun rose over the horizon, spilling golden light across the alien forest. Ethan woke with a sense of purpose, remembering the lessons of the previous days. He had learned to observe, to respect, and to move carefully through this wild land. But today felt different. Aurora, always alert to the rhythms of the frontier, had a seriousness in her eyes that Ethan hadn't seen before. "Wake up," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Today the forest will test you. Not just your skills, but your judgment, patience, and courage. Are you ready?" Ethan swallowed and nodded. "I think so. I'm ready to learn." Aurora gave a small smile, acknowledging his determination. "Good. Follow me closely and pay attention." Any mistake could make things difficult. They set out into the forest, moving quietly through the undergrowth. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of wet earth and alien flowers. Birds with iridescent feathers chirped in the treetops, and tiny creatures with glowing eyes scuttled among the bushes. Ethan followed closely, his senses alert. He noticed every detail: the crunch of leaves underfoot, the rustle of small animals, the shifting shadows that hinted at hidden spaces. After several hours, they reached a wide clearing. The ground was uneven, scattered with rocks and small pools of water. Aurora stopped and crouched low, signaling Ethan to do the same. "See that?" she whispered. In the center of the clearing was a herd of large, deer-like creatures with antlers that glowed softly in the sunlight. Their bodies shimmered with silver-blue patterns, and their movements were graceful and deliberate. "These are sky runners," Aurora explained. "They are peaceful, but highly sensitive to disturbance. If we move too fast or make sudden noises, they'll scatter, and we'll lose the opportunity to observe them and learn from them." Ethan nodded, feeling both awe and nervousness. He had never seen anything like these creatures before. Their elegance and subtle beauty made him feel small yet inspired. Aurora led him in a slow, careful approach, teaching him to match his movements with the rhythm of the forest. Step by step, they moved closer, noting how the skyrunners grazed, how they communicated with soft sounds, and how their antlers reflected sunlight in dazzling patterns. Ethan took notes in his small notebook, sketching shapes, writing observations, and learning to predict their behavior. "Good," Aurora whispered. "You're learning. Humans often miss small details, but you notice them. That skill is valuable here." Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and causing the skyrunners to lift their heads. Ethan froze, holding his breath. One of the larger creatures tilted its head, eyes fixed on them. Ethan felt panic rise in his chest, but Aurora placed a hand lightly on his shoulder, grounding him. "Stay calm," she whispered. "Breathe. Move slowly. They will sense your calmness." Ethan exhaled slowly, mimicking her movements. The skyrunners relaxed, returning to their grazing. He realized that survival in this wild land wasn't just about physical skill. It was about mental control, patience, and connection with the world around him. Aurora nodded approvingly. "Well done. You are beginning to understand." Just as Ethan began to feel proud, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble echoed through the clearing. Rocks shifted slightly, and dust rose in small clouds. Ethan's heart pounded. "What is it?" he asked, alarmed. Aurora's eyes narrowed. "A small tremor. The land here is alive. You must always be ready for surprises." She grabbed Ethan's hand, guiding him toward a cluster of sturdy rocks. "We need to move quickly, but carefully." They navigated the uneven terrain, stepping over loose stones and avoiding deep cracks that had opened in the earth. Ethan felt his pulse racing, but he focused on Aurora's calm guidance. She pointed out safe footholds, areas to avoid, and when to pause and observe. As the tremor passed, they reached a sheltered area. Ethan sank to the ground, breathing heavily. I didn't expect that," he admitted. Aurora smiled faintly. "The frontier always tests you. You have to expect the unexpected, or it will humble you quickly." After catching their breath, Aurora stood and offered her hand to Ethan. "Come. There is one more challenge for today. It will require both of us to work together." Ethan took her hand, feeling the warmth of her grip and the silent strength it conveyed. They moved deeper into the forest, reaching a small ravine where a stream had swollen with recent rain. The water rushed swiftly over rocks, forming a miniature waterfall. "The path ahead is blocked," Aurora said. "We need to find a way across. The current is strong and the rocks are slippery. It will require careful planning and trust." Ethan examined the scene. "We could use those fallen branches," he suggested, pointing to a nearby pile. "Maybe make a bridge or stepping path." Aurora's eyes lit up. "Good thinking. Let's try it." They worked together, placing branches across the flowing water, testing their stability and reinforcing weak spots with vines. Ethan's hand shook at first, nervous about falling into the cold, rushing stream. Aurora guided him patiently, showing him how to balance, distribute weight, and move with precision. Step by step, they crossed the ravine. Ethan's confidence grew with each careful movement, and Aurora's trust in him deepened as he followed her instructions without hesitation. When they finally reached the other side, both laughed with relief and triumph. "You did well," Aurora said, brushing her hair back from her face. "Humans often struggle with cooperation, but you learn quickly and think creatively. That is why you survive here. Ethan smiled, feeling a rush of pride. I couldn't have done it without you. No, you did it yourself. I only guided you. That is the difference. Humans are capable of more than they know. You are proof. As they continued their journey, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the forest. They reached a small hill overlooking a valley, where the alien flora shimmered in the evening light. Aurora sat down and gestured for Ethan to join her. Look at this, she said softly. All of this, the trees, the creatures, the streams, everything is connected. Surviving isn't just about skill. It's about understanding the connections, respecting the balance, and finding your place in it. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that his journey was more than survival. It was about learning to live fully, to adapt, and to respect the frontier's rhythms. Aurora continued, her voice quiet and steady. Humans often think they are above nature, that they can dominate it. But here, domination fails. Adaptation and respect succeed. You are learning that. And for that, I am impressed. Ethan looked at her, his chest swelling with admiration. You make it sound so simple, but I know it's not. I've learned so much, but I feel like there's always more. Aurora smiled faintly. There is always more. The frontier never stops teaching. And you? You are beginning to understand the lessons. That is rare. They stayed on the hill until darkness fell, the stars above shining brighter than any city lights Ethan had ever seen. The forest was alive with sounds, the hum of insects, the rustle of leaves, the occasional call of distant creatures. It was a symphony of life, and Ethan felt at peace. Aurora watched him quietly, noting how he had grown. He was no longer just a stranger sleeping in the hot spring. He was learning, adapting, and connecting. He had proven himself capable of handling challenges, thinking creatively, and working as a partner. "You've changed," she said softly, almost to herself. "Humans are often fragile, but you have strength, and patience, and courage." Ethan looked at her, unsure how to respond. I just want to belong. I want to be part of this world, part of what you've built here." Aurora's eyes softened. "And you are. But remember, belonging requires effort, respect, and trust. You have shown all three. That is why you have earned your place. For now." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. A mix of pride, gratitude, and something he couldn't yet name. He realized that survival was no longer his only goal. Connection, trust, and companionship had become just as important. And Aurora, the wild girl who had claimed his curiosity and guided him through the frontier, had become central to that journey. As they made their way back to the shelter, the night enveloped the forest, cool and calm. The challenges of the day had tested their skills, their patience, and their cooperation. But more than that, they had strengthened the bond between them, a bond built on mutual respect, shared adventure, and quiet admiration. Ethan settled near the fire that night, feeling more confident than ever. He had faced the forest's tests, learned to adapt, and survived. But he also understood something deeper. Thriving in this world required connection, observation, and trust, not just skill or strength. And beside him, Aurora rested, silently acknowledging that he had passed today's tests, and perhaps that he had begun to claim a place not just in the frontier, but in her world as well. The wild frontier was full of challenges, surprises, and lessons, and together they were ready to face them all.